As some of you may know, I actually got married in January, and as a result, I had to completely overhaul my finances. And now, after a couple months of testing and a few tweaks here and there, my wife and I have landed on a plan that not only helps us save more money, but we now have more control over our spending, and we are simply able to be more intentional with where we allocate our funds. So in today's video, which is the latest installment of the Financial Wellbeing Checklist, I thought it's time to show all of our loyal subscribers exactly how I manage my money and explain all of the principles that I follow when it comes to personal cash flow management, or as it's more commonly referred to as budgeting. Now, when we hear the word budgeting, a lot of people have a lot of different reactions. I know that just a few years ago, when I heard the word budgeting, I thought it referred to cutting back on all expenses and never leaving the house for anything other than work or groceries. But as you'll find out later in this video, it doesn't have to be like that. There are so many different approaches when it comes to budgeting, money management, savings, whatever you want to call it. You have our fellow YouTuber, Dave Ramsey, who pushes the every dollar budgeting approach. You have Australia's favorite golden child, the Barefoot Investor, who recommends using the bucket strategy. And you have my personal favorite, which is smashing the like button. Now, obviously that was a joke, but if you wouldn't mind just taking a second to click that like button, we would really appreciate it. On a serious note, there are so many different ways you are able to manage your money, and this definitely isn't a one-size-fits-all situation. So I'll put some links in the description so you can do your own reading on some of the different budgeting options that are available, but in this video, I'll explain the one that works best for me. Now, with that being said, although these strategies do differ in a lot of areas, there are some commonalities amongst the best strategies out there. The first one being, make sure that you know your why. Whether this comes down to saving for a luxury purchase, ensuring you have enough money for retirement, or something as fundamental as making sure that you have an emergency fund in case something catastrophic were to happen. Without having established a worthwhile why, you're not going to have the motivation to push through this and get on top of everything that you need to. So have a think about your specific reasons for wanting to take control of your money, and make sure that throughout your life you're constantly referring back to this why. Even though the specific reason may change as you get older, you always are going to need something to be pushing towards and a reason for doing the things that you're doing. An exercise that you could try that would help get to the bottom of your why would be to ask yourself firstly, why do I want to take control of my money? And then for every answer you give, ask why to that. For example, why do I want to take control of my money? I want to pay off debt. Why do you want to pay off debt? So that I don't owe anyone any money. Why don't you want to owe anyone money? Because it's stressful, and so on. And eventually, although it may be scary, the deeper down you go, you will hopefully reach a point in which you find something that is truly valuable and truly worth the sacrifice it may take in order to take full control. And the second commonality is to track your spending. I'll put this in a way that Nate O'Brien does on his budgeting video, but essentially you're going to want to run your finances like a business. In that, in order to know whether or not your business is moving in the right direction, you need to understand your cash flow. And for those of you who don't know, cash flow is just a fancy term for the money that comes into your account. So any interest, dividends, your normal salary or job, if you get any money from the government, and the money that goes out, whether that be rent, utilities, transport, food costs, whatever it may be. But how do you actually do that? Well, there are a few ways you can track your expenses. I know that there are some websites which you can connect your bank account to, and they'll automatically categorize all of your transactions into different categories to give you an idea of where and how much you're spending on different things. However, let me explain the way that I do it personally and the way that you might want to try it as well. So firstly, you're going to want to log on to the online portal for any bank accounts or credit cards that you use for spending. You're going to want to go to the transaction section and then look for an option to export your transactions. Now, I would recommend that you export the last 90 days from each of your accounts and export those as Excel spreadsheets. Now, some spreadsheets may come with additional information, but to keep it simple, all you need is the date, the description of the transaction, and the amount. Once you've got that, all you need to do is start a column outside of the data and begin giving each transaction a category. And once you've established categories that you feel will encompass all of your transactions, then you can start to go through the list and allocate categories to each transaction. From here, you'll want to get a sum for the total amount of money that you spent on each category. All you need to do is highlight the category column, click the filter button, and then filter from A to Z. Then make sure that you click this button and voila. All of the transactions are now grouped based on their category. So now that they're all together, we can get the sum. A simple way to do this is just to go to a cell right of the category, put in the formula equals SUM or equals sum, open bracket, and then click and hold all transactions from that particular category. That will give you the sum, and repeat this for all of the categories. Now, for most people, this is usually quite eye-opening. I know that for me personally, the amount that I spent on groceries and eating out, just food in general, was way more than I was thinking it would be. But understanding how you actually spend your money is the purpose of this exercise. So this should give you a real good idea of what you're spending now and what potentially you need to take into account, but also it'll show you areas which you can cut back on. Now for the fun part. What you want to do at this point is start allocating amounts of money to go towards each of these categories. Now I'll put a link to a spreadsheet that we created and the one that I use in the description below. Feel free to use that if you would like. Otherwise, you can create your own spreadsheet or do it on pencil and paper. It doesn't really matter to me. The important part is that you're writing it down. Now, as you can see here, there are two main categories. There's the budgeted expenses and then the percentage expenses. Now, quite obviously, some of these will be one or the other. For example, things like your phone bill, your rent, your gym membership, health insurance are quite obviously budgeted expenses. You know how much it's going to be, and so you can budget accordingly. And for some of you, particularly those with a fixed income, you may think that budgeted expenses is the way to go for all categories. However, for myself and for those who have inconsistent incomes, including some categories of expenses as percentage expenses may be a good way to go about it. To give you an idea, although rent isn't going to change from month to month basis, our phone bill isn't going to change, utilities shouldn't change that much, there are some things where if our income were to go up or to go down, a little variance in that amount wouldn't be the end of the world. So for example, my wife and I each have a fun account or fun expenses which we allocate a certain percentage to go towards. So that means when all of the budgeted expenses are taken into account, there's a certain percentage of that remaining money that goes towards our fun expenses. This is similar for a Christmas account that we have. Now, although it may be a small percentage if we consider the entire year, the Christmas account is there to account for the general increase in expenditure that most people see around Christmas time. Whether that be traveling to see family, obviously there's Christmas gifts to account for, more eating out, holidays, things like that. So for us, if we're having a really good year and earning more money, then having a little bit more go towards that Christmas account, that is totally fine. And vice versa, if we had a poor year and the amount we earned dipped, if we couldn't really spend that much at Christmas time going on a fancy holiday or spending gifts, that is probably a good thing. And as you can see, if you do end up using the spreadsheet down in the description, it's all formulated so that all you need to do is input the figures and the numbers will automatically be calculated for you. If you have any questions about these or are unsure, definitely just ask in the comment section below and I'll do my best to get to every single one and help you guys figure out where you may want to put different expenses. Now, one more thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap this video up. As some of you may have noticed on the spreadsheet, there's a column to take into consideration which account you send the money to. And honestly, optimizing this has got to be one of the most effective ways to save more money I've ever implemented. Aside from the basic advantages of having separate accounts within the one bank, meaning that within the one login you have a number of different accounts named different things, obviously that allows you to separate the money and not get confused with which money is where. However, where you can really reap the benefits of saving more money is in having some accounts in entirely separate banks. Now, I've mentioned this many times on the channel, but it is just as important now as ever. For us, we have things like our emergency fund and our bills all kept at an entirely separate bank from the rest of our transactions. And the reason for this is that it just gives us one extra layer of protection when it comes to overspending. For example, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the situation where potentially you're out with a group of friends, they want to go and do something extra that'll cost you a bit more money, and basically you haven't allocated enough money to be able to go ahead and do that. If you were to have your savings or the money for your bills or your emergency fund in the same account, it would literally take you a few seconds to log onto your bank, go to that account and transfer it to your everyday transactions. And this is something that I personally did all the time. But if you had that money that was saved for a larger purpose in an entirely separate bank, then at the very least, if you went on and tried to transfer the money to your transaction account, it would take a couple of hours. And luckily for us, on the weekends, sometimes it doesn't even come through at all until Monday. So although you're physically putting in kind of like a child lock barrier on your money, a lot of the time it really is for the better. And for me personally, like I said, it's one of the best things I ever did. Now, with that being said, most of the bigger banks nowadays actually offer instant transfers between one another. However, there are some great banks that don't. You can watch this video here to see some of the options, and this is also where I reveal exactly which bank accounts I personally use. So make sure to give that a watch after you finish watching this one. But that's pretty much it for this video. I hope I was able to demonstrate how this works fairly clearly. If you have any questions or you want me to go over anything in a little bit more detail, like I said, pop those in the comment section below and I'll be able to help you out. Other than that, if you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more content like it, definitely go down, click the subscribe button and click that notification bell. That'll ensure that you're first to know when any new content is posted. But if you can't wait that long, here's a video that YouTube thinks you'll enjoy, and this is our latest video. Hopefully one of those appeal to you, but if not, I'll see you in the next one.